I really have to take exception with some of the media narrative right now as a scientist. I just can't stand it anymore. After, 5 months now, most of us have been locked down, not traveling anywhere, not doing anything fun. Many of us not even going to work because there isn't work or because they want us to work from our houses. That there's this asinine notion that this heat wave we're going through is somehow related to man. We've also, if you go look for them, you can see stories about how wonderful it is that people aren't there, how nature has returned and the animals are surging back and the plants are surging back, and oh, what a wonderful thing it is that we're not there. I remember reading a story about how the air quality in New Delhi was nicer than it ever had been since cars were invented. And if man is responsible, then shouldn't all of this activity been making things better? The notion that everyone who's a climate alarmist is selling us is that the problem with the planet's climate is that there are people. That people's behavior is changing the climate. Well, for 4 months now, they've controlled our behavior. And now they're claiming that somehow, despite having controlled our behavior, that it doesn't have any effect. Well, if it doesn't have any effect, what's the point of taking any action? And if it doesn't have any effect, then it can't possibly be us. Because if you do it, scientifically speaking, then if you remove the agonist, then it should revert to a state prior to the agonist. Now, granted, maybe 4 months isn't long enough, but 4 months of us sitting here, doing nothing, and then this massive heat wave in America being blamed because we've been sitting here doing nothing, following instructions. Well, we're damned if we do and damned if we don't. Next week, I'm going to go into class. And the very first week, we're going to talk about the difference between science and pseudoscience. And there are a couple of hallmark bullet points that I make and that the course coordinator for this particular course has asked us to make. And two of these are that, number one, agonists can be measured. That if you make a change, you should be able to measure a difference. And two, it must be falsifiable. We'll get to that one in a second. So we've made a change. And what do they measure? No change in the outcome. Well, if there's no change in the outcome, then is the prior agonist actually responsible for the outcome in the first place? If you are bleeding all the time and you have a bullet in you, a gunshot wound, and they remove the bullet and sew up the wound and you keep bleeding, you can't blame the bullet. There must be something else going on. And yet, here we have human behavior removed from the equation. I mean, not entirely, but it's been totally minimized by their own admission in these other stories. And it gets worse. I'm confused. Very confused. Number two, it must be falsifiable. That doesn't mean that it means that it must be possible to find evidence that says that your hypothesis is false. And the way they've dressed it up now with man-made climate change is that it's not falsifiable because anything we do changes it. Because, of course, anything you do changes it. You've changed the outcome by measuring it. Because when you look at something, you change it. We can't actually see things as they are because we can't watch them happen where they are without disturbing the circumstances. So to say that men change climate, yes. Is our change significant? I don't think so. But they will say that man-made climate change causes the seas to rise and the seas to fall. It causes more frog births. It causes fewer frog births. So there's no room for anything to prove that it's false. There's no way to find any evidence that says you're wrong. That's not science. That's religion. And if you can't prove it wrong, then how can you prove it right? You're not proving anything. You are looking for the answer that you want to find. And that's not scientific. There are a lot of people who do that, who call themselves scientists, but calling yourself a cantaloupe does not make you a melon. Okay? And I'm tired of this. I teach it every semester. I don't know if it rubs off on anybody, and it may not rub off on you. But it's a thought that I have that it is impossible for, if we are the cause of climate change that is significant, for us to remove ourselves from the equation and have it get worse if we're the cause. This means to me, and this is normal in science, there is something else going on. I've given tests. Sometimes the multiple choice has more than one possible answer. Sometimes it's none of the above. And if the question is man's behavior a significant effector of the global climate, then I have two questions for you. Number one, define significant. And number two, are you open to the possibility that the answer is no? Because if the answer is no, there's nothing in it for anybody. There's no journal of negative results, nowhere to publish that says, hey, we found out that it's not relevant, not related, not important. Because everybody's going to justify all the money and the time that they spend on it to a grant committee, to the National Science Foundation, to whoever pays you money. You've got to explain to them how you've spent their money. And nobody wants to spend money to find out that it doesn't work. It happens, but nobody wants to be that guy. So everyone wants everything they do to be significant. And granting agencies and scientific labs are no different. I will go into class and I will tell them I've made mistakes. And I want them to know scientists are people too. And so if man caused climate change, scientists declaring what changes should be made will change it too. And it may not get better. It might actually make it worse. Food for thought. Have a great day. Godspeed. Take care of yourselves.